Let's take a moment to understand Gaza and learn what it's like to live there. Gaza is part of Palestine. It's surrounded by Egypt, Israel, and the Mediterranean Sea. It's tiny, really tiny, 40 kilometers in length and 12 kilometers at its widest point. 2.3 million people are crammed into that tiny space. It's one of the most densely populated parts of the world. Now, why are so many people there? 70% of Gaza's inhabitants are refugees and their descendants from 1948. When Israel was founded 75 years ago, it demolished 29 villages in Palestine. Tens of thousands of people were forced to flee, and they went to Gaza. That event is referred to as Nakba, the Arabic word for disaster. Israel never allowed them to return. So what has happened since? A struggle for control over Gaza, which has destroyed the freedom and dignity of the Palestinians living there. In 1967, Israel seized control of Gaza and imposed military rule. People were forced off their land, and more than 20 Israeli settlements were built. In the early 1990s, Israel cut off Gaza from the outside world. It was nearly impossible to leave or enter Gaza. In 2005, Israel pulled its soldiers and troops out of Gaza, but it retained control of Gaza's borders, economy, and airspace. But then, in 2006, something happened that incensed Israel. Elections were held in Palestine, and Hamas won. It beat its rival Fatah, which was seen as corrupt and ineffective. So Hamas would from then on govern Gaza. But Israel still controlled the borders, economy, and airspace. It controlled water, electricity, telecommunications, and more. That's why the United Nations, international bodies, and most governments still consider Gaza to be under Israeli occupation. Israel ramped up its control of Gaza. It closed border crossings and imposed the blockade. Most imports and exports were blocked. There were limits on necessities like food, fuel, and construction materials. Travel was banned. Fishermen were restricted in terms of how far they could go out to sea. All this destroyed Gaza's economy, and it destroyed the lives of Palestinians in Gaza. It's why people refer to Gaza as the world's largest open-air prison. Things we take for granted, Palestinians in Gaza have to ration. Things like water, electricity, food. The healthcare system is depleted, and Israel rarely allows patients to leave Gaza to seek proper treatment. It doesn't allow gifted students to leave on scholarships. As a result, more than half the population lives under the poverty line. There are high levels of malnutrition. Depression and anxiety are at an all-time high, and it's impossible for young people, most of whom are highly educated, to find work. Gaza has the highest unemployment rate in the world at 45%, and for young people, that number soars to 70%. In 2020, the United Nations said that if things didn't change, Gaza would be unlivable by 2020. Well, guess what? Things have deteriorated since. Israel launched 4 major airstrikes in Gaza. These killed thousands of people and terrorized those who survived. The attacks destroyed tens of thousands of homes and buildings. With limitations on imports and the inability to rebuild or plan for the future, Gaza has only gone downhill. So even before this present escalation of attacks, Gaza's residents were shut off from the rest of the world. They had undergone years of deprivation and suffering, and they could see no way out.